So here we are taking a look at our living vivariums, and we have two of them that happen to have some bella palms in them. Today we're going to be spending a little bit of time talking about palms, smaller palms and palm trees. I'm Kim from the Tye-Dyed plant team, and as we do this video at the end of February, where we've been going through weeks and weeks of nothing but cold weather and ice and snow and wind and just misery, it's nice to be able to step back and take a couple minutes to talk about something that thrives in a tropical environment. And these palm trees do just that. These are called bella palms. They come in a variety of shapes. I have two shapes and sizes, I'm sorry. We've got two that are relatively small, two that are medium sized, and hopefully in our plant order that might be coming in later this week, delayed because of bad weather, we'll get some that are maybe twice the size of this particular bella palm. These work well in your tanks, in your living vivariums. They are non-toxic, so that's a good thing to know. And they fit well in nooks and crannies. And I'll give you an example of that here in just a little bit. We'll walk out onto the floor and I'll show you the palms in actual vivariums. But they look well tucked in. Sometimes you can do a little grouping of them if you wanted to do something like that. And they really go well when they're close together, and if they're in an area where you might have some other background, like a cork or perhaps maybe a background in one of your vivariums. They grow with several stems, as you might be able to see. On this particular one, you can see 3 or 4 stems, and on the larger one, you can see there are quite a few. This is just important to know as a matter of differentiating these from other palms. I'm going to show you a majesty palm on the floor here in just a little bit. We like to have well-drained soil, keep them nice and moist. Remember, they are tropical. And as you're going around misting your plants, if you're doing that, as that's part of your daily routine, give them a little misting on a daily basis. They really, really like that. If you don't do that every day, then maybe misting them every 3 days would be okay, but it's nice to keep them nice and moist on their fronds. They grow at different rates. They're relatively slow growers. Some of them will grow nice and in a bunch, and others have a tendency to take a frond and maybe put it out a little bit longer. And if that should happen, first of all, that's okay. Secondly, that's up to you if it fits your environment. If you have an area that's bare and you want to fill it in, then just continue to let this grow. If this is just getting in your way and it's not going to look real well and you want to keep everything perhaps a little smaller and a little more compact, then take out your snipper and go ahead and you can just cut that right off and it will work just fine. But they do well in a great small environment. They will grow a little bit quicker if you fertilize them, maybe once every 2 weeks or so. Use RO water, the reverse osmosis water, and that will keep these bella palms growing quite well. And again, hopefully by the end of this week, we might have some larger ones in. What I like to do now is take a couple minutes. We're just going to walk out onto the floor and I'm going to show you where these are in a living vivarium, 2 living vivariums, and I'll also show you that majesty palm where you can see the differentiation between how the stalks grow. We'll walk outside now. So here we are taking a look at our living vivariums, and we have 2 of them that happen to have some bella palms in them. One of them that we've had here for just a little bit longer, and you can see we're starting to get a little legginess here on each one of these. Again, that's just fine. You can see the piece of cork, the background is a little bit lower, so we do have this empty space back here, and these longer fronds will start to fill that in. Again, they grow moderately fast, so if you're expecting this to fill in the next week or so, that ain't going to be happening. It's going to take a little bit of time to do that. But that's an example of taking one of the bella palms and using it to fill up some of the space that you might have in the back of the vivarium. Conversely, earlier today we built a new vivarium, and in this particular one, we have one that's a little more bunchy. You can see what our bunchy ones look like here, so it's a little bit lower. And again, this takes an area that is a nook and cranny, as I call it, and just fills it in quite well. We have other plants in here that are taking up areas perfectly, but in this back side here where we've got some space, it works well. I will probably keep this one relatively low, relatively short. If it starts to put out a stalk, that gets too high, I'll probably clip that off. But that's just a good example of how you can take one and just nestle it in to a certain area. Now, a lot of this depends upon your own artistic abilities, not that you have to be artistic, but before you put these together, just take a look and say, do I want this to grow tall? Do I want this to fill a high space? Or do I want this to just be kind of a tropical, wet, damp spot, and get something that's a little bit smaller and nestle it into one of those nooks or crannies. Now, I did mention the differences between the Bella palms and our Majesty palms. Let's walk across the floor and I'll compare this to a Majesty palm and you'll be able to see the difference between the two. So here we have a Majesty palm, and while it's much larger, you can see just by the structure, here again is our Bella palm, which looks a little bit grassy with multiple stalks, and the Majesty palm has a single stalk or a single trunk that just comes out of the soil. And just as an aside, as we look at this nice Majesty palm, the growth of these is very, very similar to your Bella palm. You can see there's a new frond coming out here. This is your new growth, and this will open up quite nicely. There's another piece of new growth coming out down here, which really just looks like a spike. There are no fronds that have opened up on that, but it will eventually do that and come out quite nicely. So if you look at how this new growth is coming out on the Majesty palm, you will see the same kind of structure coming out on your Bella palm. That's how they go ahead and put out their new growth. It starts out as a spike. You might think it's something a little bit unusual, but then eventually it will open up and the fronds will fill in quite well. So there we have it, our palms, our Bella palms, which work great in your tanks and your living vivariums. And then just as an extra bonus, we've shown you the Majesty palm. There you are today at Tye-Dyed Iguana.